All right, good afternoon. This is Chris Avila with the Waco Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Waco MPO Technical Committee meeting. I have 2 o'clock sharp, and we'll go ahead and get started here. And so the very first thing we will do is we will verify who is on the call with us today. You may notice that we're using a slightly different format than what we've used previously for the technical committee meeting, so we don't have to do a formal roll call, but I will verify who's on with us. And if I missed you, if at the end, let me know if you're with us today. And I'm just going to call folks out in the order that I see them on my screen. And so first I've got Mitch Davison from the city of Woodway. I've got Amy Berlarley Highland from the city of Waco, Victor Gable from TxDOT. I've got Frank Leos from the city of McGregor, Tom Dahl from the city of Waco, Serena Stevenson from Waco Transit, Zane Dunham from McLennan County Engineers, Clayton Zaka from the TxDOT Waco District Area Engineer. I see Beatrice Warden from the City of Waco Planning Department. I have Brenton Lane from the Waco District of TxDOT. Jeff Jackson, also from the TxDOT Area Engineer's Office. Barbara Maley from the Federal Highway Administration. Christy Bonham from the TxDOT Waco District. Carl McNair from Baylor University. Janie Temple from TxDOT Transportation Planning and Programming Division. Debbie Tahiri from the Public Transportation Division of TxDOT. Bridget Gonzalez from Transportation Planning and Programming in TxDOT in Austin. And Christine Push from TxDOT Transportation Planning and Programming. And then I see that Ed Hard has joined us from the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. And I heard Mayor Jaska from the city of Ross earlier as well. Anyone that I have missed, please let me know. All right, sounds like we captured everyone. And of course, we have Chelsea and Annette from my staff with us today as well. So as far as public comments are concerned, because the Zoom webinar format is a little bit different than what we've used previously, members of the public are not able to necessarily directly address the technical committee unless they registered with us earlier. And any written comments that we received as of 10 a.m. this morning, we would read it into the record at this time also. For the record, we have not received anyone registering to speak, and we have not received any formal written comments as of this morning's 10 a.m. deadline. So with that, we will begin the first order of business, which is the Waco Transit Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and the safety targets that are included within that document. Real briefly, that plan is what the last of the FAST Act required performance targets that needed to be implemented and addressed within the MPO regions and for transit agencies. The main purpose of this is to identify where there are risks of problems within the operations of the transit agency, and also along with the operations of their fixed route and demand response system, and to manage those risks more proactively and basically incorporate their recommendations into the transportation planning process and identify opportunities we have as an MPO to assist the Waco Transit with accomplishing the goals and targets that they've identified for themselves. Waco Transit adopted their plan back in June. And under the federal regulations, MPOs have 180 days after we receive them from Waco Transit to accept their targets and accept their plan, and to begin work on our end into incorporating them into the transportation planning process. After July 21st, any actions we take subsequent to that date, we would have to be able to demonstrate how our planning process has incorporated those targets and how the mix of projects we're including in our transportation plan and TIP are assisting Waco Transit in achieving their goals within the safety plan. Now, for those of you who probably took a look at the safety plan that we provided to you, would probably notice that a big chunk of that plan deals with internal operations within their agency and are beyond the traditional purview of the MPO. Things such as how do we improve the process of maintaining our buses so that we better manage some of the inherent safety risks that come with that process, such as elevating a 40-foot bus several feet into the air has inherent risks associated with that. And so there's a lot of discussion and a lot of goals to make those processes safer. But there are several areas that are relevant to the MPO, and that's what we're going to be focusing our attention on today. There are four basic targets that have been adopted in this plan, and we'll be looking at trying to address each of these. They are fatalities, serious injuries, number of safety events, and significant mechanical failures. And that last bullet point there has actually generated quite a bit of conversation amongst some of my colleagues elsewhere in Texas. And so we'll discuss a little bit about why that's relevant to the MPO process in a little bit. So this slide number 8, for those of you following along via the website, these are the actual targets that were adopted within the safety plan, and they are identical to the baseline conditions that have been observed between 2015 and 2020, the 5-year baseline. The good news is that there have been no fatalities with Waco Transit's operations since 2015. And as you can imagine, that's really hard to improve upon. But we would certainly have an interest in maintaining that zero fatality rate moving forward into the future. The serious injuries also are very low for both fixed route and demand response system. And for serious injuries, from practical definition, these are your life-threatening injuries. So over a 5-year period, the average annual number of serious injuries for the fixed route system was 2.6. That translates to a total of 13 during that 5-year period. And for the demand response system, they had a total of 5. So that translates into 1 per year. And then you can see that translates into a very small number of serious injuries per mile of revenue service. When we look at safety events, this includes more than just the ones where someone actually got hurt. This also includes fender benders into that equation. And there are some inherent differences between the fixed route system and the demand response system on this particular metric. For the fixed route system, their travel is defined on certain roadways, generally arterial roadways that have fairly defined traffic control, traffic signals at major intersections, and also a limited number of vehicles. So you don't have nearly as many fender bender type safety events associated with the fixed route system. But your vehicles are carrying more people, so there is the risk of having more people being hurt in a particular event. And you can kind of see that here, where we actually have fewer events but more injuries. When we look at demand response, that's flipped. The demand response system is potentially going on any public street within 3/4 of a mile of their fixed route system. And traffic control is in some cases not as significant as you would on the arterial network. But these vehicles carry a lot fewer people. In fact, sometimes they may be making a trip with only one person on one revenue passenger on board. So here you're more likely to have fender bender type of safety events, but probably fewer of the more serious injuries. And that shows up in the statistics that we have here, where we have a lot more safety events, 3 times the number of safety events almost than the number of serious injuries. And then finally, we get to the significant mechanical failures. And as you can imagine, with everything in the FTA program, there is a very precise definition of what constitutes a significant mechanical failure. And the numbers here seem pretty large, and here we would like to see larger numbers, not smaller numbers, for the actual target. But I want to go into a little more detail here, because actually this rate of distance between significant mechanical failures is, in our opinion, maybe a little bit on the high side, but we have an explanation why that might be and why we think that's going to improve shortly. And the reason we have an interest in mechanical failures is because you can't pick and choose when those happen oftentimes. Anyone who's operated an older vehicle like myself will testify that these failures oftentimes occur in a very inconvenient location where you don't necessarily have an opportunity to pull out of the flow of traffic to a point of safety. You oftentimes don't have a safe place for your passengers to offload and wait for the next vehicle to come pick them up. And so the risk that something more significant or more serious could happen in that time frame increases pretty dramatically. And so we have an interest in minimizing the number of mechanical failures so that we can minimize that risk of something worse happening. So these targets are going to be reassessed annually by Waco Transit, and while the number of fatalities and serious injuries are pretty low, we do want to maintain those low numbers moving forward. But for the mechanical failures, for the fixed route system, when you this translates into about 1 failure every 5.5 days over that 5-year period between 2015 and 2020. Considering that Waco Transit operates, for the most part, 6 days a week, except for holidays, this represents 1 significant mechanical failure a week for their system. And then the demand response is a little bit less frequent, about 1 every 8.5 days, more or less. So why is that? Well, it goes directly back to the asset. Serena?
I thought I was on mute. I was looking at the useful life benchmark. I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, and Serena, if something comes up, feel free to jump right in if I'm not covering it quite right. So this is related directly to the useful life benchmark, and hopefully you all remember that this is something that we've talked about usually in February. And if you go back 2 years ago into 2019, you'll notice that almost every vehicle that Waco Transit was operating was beyond its useful life benchmark. And this is pretty much a measure of age. And anyone who has an old vehicle will testify that, yes, the older your vehicle is, the more likely you're going to have mechanical failures. Last year, that's changed quite significantly. For fixed route buses, we went from half of the fleet being old to only a handful of the vehicles being old. And same thing for cutaways, we went from everything being old to only half the fleet. Vans, none of them are now past that benchmark. Minivans, only 1 out of 5. And automobiles are only used, the way I understand, sparingly for very specialized circumstances. So we have reason to think that this metric is going to improve very significantly in the near-term future, although the plan does maintain that same target as what we've seen over the 5-year average. But again, this is something that's going to be reevaluated annually. And so probably next summer, we'll have a much better idea of how that metric is improving. Now, as far as the MPO is concerned, now we have the question of how do we tie this into our planning process, and are there certain things that we could be doing on our end to assist Waco Transit in achieving their targets? So obviously we're interested in the age and condition of their fleet, and that we also address with the asset condition targets that we adopt annually, and usually, or not adopt, we accept them from Waco Transit. And that's usually in February timeframe. And so that's the next set of those targets will be coming to you probably within the next 30 to 60 days for your consideration. But we're also interested in the network that Waco Transit operates on. And so we do have an interest in the overall system, meaning roadways that are considered local or maybe a minor collector, although we don't necessarily have the ability to target resources to those, since the federal dollars are only eligible for major collectors and above. But as an MPO, we feel like we can at least be a facilitator for the conversations about how to improve the condition of the overall system. Now, for the fixed route system, as I mentioned, generally they operate more or less on the arterial network or major collectors, or perhaps the more significant freeways within our region. There we can have a conversation about what is the pavement condition of those facilities, what is the bridge condition, what's the condition of things like lane markings and signage, and are the signals operating efficiently, or are there improvements that could be made there as well. But we also want to do a hotspot analysis of crashes, and as well as the more severe crashes, to see if there's things that can be done differently to reduce those numbers, which not only would benefit the transit operations, but would also benefit the overall traveling public as well. And of course, we also support the state's targets when it comes to fatalities and serious injuries. And so we have an interest, kind of a dual interest there as well, of trying to make improvements there. Now, we're not anticipating a lot of activity after or over the next 12 to 18 months, especially given this exercise we've been going through for the last several months with our transportation improvement program. But we're not going to wait to make those changes to our planning process to incorporate these targets. And so our intent is to complete this work and get it to you for your recommendation this summer, so that we can move forward, and start making some progress towards these targets. So today, where we are is the action that we need is an acknowledgement and acceptance of the Waco Transit Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, and that we would be supporting the safety targets that Waco Transit has adopted within that plan. And then sometime this summer, we'll be coming back to you with an amendment to our Metropolitan Transportation Plan and possibly some changes to the TIP to incorporate these targets and some actions to help move the needle forward on these particular targets. So I will pause here and see if there are any questions. And if there are none, then we will ask if there's a motion to recommend approval.
I move to approve.
All right, thank you, Amy. We have a motion from Amy.
A second.
And I have a second from Zane Dunham. All right, is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. So if everyone will unmute yourself and say aye if you approve.
Aye.
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 All right, and likewise, if anyone does not approve, if you would say nay at this time. Hearing none, we will forward that unanimous recommendation to the MPO Policy Board for their consideration. Thank you. All right, the next item we have on here is that the Texas Department of Transportation is conducting several surveys within our region to support the development of our travel demand model, but also to have a better understanding of how COVID-19 is impacting travel behaviors within our region, or maybe not affecting them. And so there are two surveys that are being conducted, and there's actually additional work that's going on in addition to this, which we have a couple of folks with us today who will go through all this in a lot more detail. But we have an establishment travel survey and a household travel survey to better understand how businesses are making trips within our region and individual households as well. And this information then directly feeds into trip tables, which are part of the travel demand model that the MPO uses and TxDOT also uses to model what the future may look like in terms of traffic volumes within our region 20 or 25 years into the future. And you may notice that when we adopt our metropolitan transportation plans, or maybe when we do an interim amendment, there's a lot of heavy analysis from that model to to be able to understand how our proposed projects may impact things in the future, both positively or negatively. And so we have Christine Push and from TxDOT and Ed Hard from TTI who are with us today. And they're going to go into a lot more detail on these surveys. And there are probably a couple of things here that the technical committee will have an interest in. And so with that, let me hand this over to our guests and welcome. And we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you. My name is Christine Push, and I'm the Travel Survey Program Manager at TxDOT. And I have Ed Hard with me too, and he's going to start off the presentation. He is the Program Manager at TTI, working with the travel surveys as well. So Ed, if you want to get started.
Sure. Thanks, Christine, and thanks Waco MPO for having us and allowing us to talk about the travel surveys. As Christine mentioned, what we want to do today is just give you a high-level overview of the travel surveys that have been or soon will be conducted in the Waco MPO study area, and give you a little bit of background on how that all occurs and the way surveys in Texas are done. TxDOT has a statewide travel survey program where surveys are conducted at MPOs around the state on a rotational basis, where a comprehensive set of surveys are conducted about every 10 years. And the way they do this is they've consolidated all the MPOs in the state, which I believe there are 24, 25, into 14 travel survey regions. So that gives them the ability to make it around the state and get everyone the data that they need to support transportation planning and modeling. And the surveys are conducted generally around the period of time when the saturation counts for the TxDOT district is done. So that's kind of why we're here at this point in time. The saturation counts, I believe, for Waco in the Waco district were conducted in 2020. So I think we're on a fairly good schedule there to have these surveys being conducted at this point in time. Next slide, please. And you're all very familiar with your own survey area or MPO study area, and that is the study area for the survey, McLennan County. One thing that I'll add is you see the blue dots around the perimeter of the MPO boundary area. Those represent the major highways or thoroughfares where traffic come into and out of the study area. And for us, those are key points where we collect traffic information of travel coming into and out of, and traffic count data that helps us to develop the information that we need for model input. And some of you may remember, some of the old timers may remember many years ago, TxDOT conducted these roadside surveys where surveys were conducted along the side of the road. And these would be the old roadside survey stations, if anyone's familiar with that. Thank you, Chris. Go on ahead. And today we're going to talk to you or just give you an overview of the different types of surveys. And you see there's 3 different types: household surveys, establishment surveys, which include 2 different components. And Christine's going to give you some good further detail on the household and the establishment surveys. And also, I'll also talk about an external survey, which has already been completed for the Waco MPO study area, and let you understand what data has been collected as part of that. But the key thing is, and the reason why there's these different types of surveys, is that each one collects a different component of travel that's needed for input into the travel demand model, like travel from residents, from visitors, from travel that's associated with businesses and such. So that's why we have to do these different types of surveys. And what's important is also the count data that's collected, that have been collected by the district. We need those data that's recent to be able to expand the survey data that we collect. So that's why it's important that the counts are conducted as well, the traffic counts. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so as Ed said, we're trying to conduct various surveys to collect different types of data. And so the household survey really focuses on getting information about where the residents in the area are traveling. And so to do that, we ask people to track their travel for a day, and they're just randomly selected households, and they'll be sent a postcard in the mail. And then they'll be asked just to fill out a recruitment survey, and they can do that by web, or they can do it by phone, talking to our vendors. And then they'll be assigned that travel date. And back in the day, we used to just have pen and paper surveys, and people would track, or we had caddy surveys, and people would track their travel on paper, and then the vendor would call them and get that information. And now our vendor has actually developed an app, so the app can track people's travel automatically. So people will download that, it tracks all their stops, and then people just have to confirm where they went. Or there's also a web-based survey. So if people don't feel comfortable downloading that app on their phone, they can also just fill out the survey online. So it makes it easier for them. And we have options for everyone. Next slide. So we want to make sure we're capturing trips from all different types of people. And since travel can vary based on household size and income, we stratified our sample that way. We're looking to survey 1,500 households. And for our modeling purposes, we're trying to get trip production rates, trip length data, and estimates of total travel made by residents. And here you'll see a picture of our app that the vendor is going to be using for this survey. And you can go to the next slide. This is the other survey we do an establishment survey, and this is to collect information about the traffic generated by businesses. The one component is the workplace survey, and as you'll see in the pictures, part of this involves at half of the sites conducting a survey, asking people where they're coming from and where they're going to. At each site, we also will do counts. And so we're looking at the number of vehicles and pedestrians coming in and out of that site for that one day. Again, we also want to make sure that we're surveying lots of different types of businesses. And so we've stratified the sample by basic, retail, service, and education. We're going to be surveying a total of 300 workplaces. Half of those will be the sites with the survey, the interviews being conducted. We'll also be conducting 7 special generator surveys. Those are bigger surveys. And then the key outcomes for the survey are just trip attraction rates, estimates of non-resident travel, and estimates of commercial vehicle travel. Go to the next slide. The other component of the establishment survey is the commercial vehicle component. And this works a lot like the household survey in that we're asking the participants to track their travel for a day, except it's with commercial vehicles. And so like the household survey, the people will be able to track their travel through an app, online, or using a paper survey. We're looking to survey 300 commercial vehicle drivers, and the sample is going to be stratified by establishment size and sector. We're also looking to get an equal mix of cargo and service vehicles. For the model, we're trying to get estimates of commercial vehicle trips, trip length data for commercial vehicles, and cargo and transport data. Next slide. So where do we stand right now? So we have completed the pilot survey for the commercial vehicle and household surveys. And we are moving forward with the household surveys right now. All of those instruments have been finalized, and our vendor just started recruitment this week. I just received 2 calls today from people who have been recruited and just have questions about that survey. So you guys may also be getting those kind of questions. The vendor is starting off somewhat slowly this semester, just recruiting a number of households, and then they're going to go in strong next semester. And hopefully we'll get those done by the end of 2021. Commercial vehicle, we did do the pilot. We're still finalizing some of the materials, and we should be getting started on those pretty soon. Those are part of the establishment survey, which the other component is the workplace survey. And so in part, we're kind of taking it slowly because the workplace survey is on hold. It's the one survey right now that involves in-person interactions. And so we want to make sure we're really safe, but we are looking at how to conduct those safely. And so we'll be looking at that and hopefully moving forward with those soon. So I'm going to turn it over to Ed. He'll talk a little bit more about the external study, which was completed in 2018. You can go to the next slide.
Sure, thanks, Christine. And yeah, this is just some background information on the external study, or the old, what used to be called the roadside survey. Now, instead of collecting data along those sides of the roadways, which is very unsafe and really not realistic anymore, the way we're able to collect this information and develop the data that's needed is by buying passive data. You know, everyone carries a mobile device, or so many cars these days have a GPS navigation equipment already included. So these days you can buy data that provides information that allows us to study travel patterns and get the information that we need. So that's how we're doing the old roadside surveys now. So what the external study does is it gives us information on the amount of traffic that comes into, out of, and through the Waco MPO area. And through that, we determine at each one of those highway, remember those blue dots that I mentioned around the perimeter of the study area, the highway locations. At each one of those roadside location or external stations, we get a percentage of the amount of traffic that's traveling completely through the study area or just coming in and out, just crossing the boundary. We get a percentage of non-commercial trips and commercial trips, estimates of non-resident travel, and also trip length frequency information, which allows us to be able to calculate things like total VMT and such. And with that, you can see we can put together that one graphic on the right-hand side would be each one of those descriptors would be like a highway point, and those show the flows between the different external or roadside survey locations around the perimeter of the study area. Those are the kinds of things that we could develop for the MPO. And that's actually a dynamic a visualization where you could click on the roadway and see where the flow the flow bands go to all other roadways around the area. That's something that we could provide. Next slide, please. And this is just a copy of the front cover of the Waco external study that's been completed. And the key things that come out of it are the total external to external trips. Those are the trips that travel completely through the study area. And the graphic on the upper right-hand side shows you by weight or bandwidth of, the red coloring on the roadway, the amount of total traffic that's traveling through the area. And obviously I-35 is the thickest bandwidth, right? That's where you have the most of the travel that's traveling through the study area. But you can see some of the other highways too that have a good deal of external travel as well. On the other hand, trips that cross the boundary that have a trip in inside the study area, what the graphic on the bottom right shows you by color, and the darker the color, the more trips. It shows you the density of the total trip making within the area that from vehicles that cross the study area boundary. So there's more data on that within the report and the data that we provide to the modelers, but that kind of shows you visually kind of the density of the trip making or trip ends within the study area. Next slide, please. And one of the things that we wanted to just let you know about all the different surveys is that all the deliverables that come with them in the event that you want to look at them or you're interested or you need some information for all the different types of surveys for each vendor or contractor that TxDOT has that's collecting the data. They provide a report that's primarily going to just give you the details on the timing of the data collection and the methods that they used, whereas the TTI reports that we prepare are going to do more of the analysis of the data. We prepare one that's a summary report that's more for more general in use, more for public and MPO consumption, just to look at high-level facts and figures. And then we prepare a technical memorandum that goes directly to the modelers that has all of the different metrics and trip rates and things that they need, and the trip tables were actually sent electronically. So those are some of the deliverables and some of the key metrics that you see: trip rates, OD tables, trip and frequency. Those are the key things. So next slide. I think that's the end of it. And I guess the final thing, and I'm sure Christine can add too, is that I think one of the key reasons for us to come to you today is to help get your help in passing the word or making everyone aware that this is going on. If you need to pass it along to the policy board or to your city management or your directors of your organizations, that would be good, just to let everyone know this is going on around the community. And Christine, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't. No, but if you guys need our help in doing that, just let us know if there's anything we can provide to help you guys. We appreciate your help.
Yes, and just to let the technical committee know, we do have this scheduled for a discussion during our policy board meeting scheduled for December 17th. All right, so does anyone on the technical committee have any questions, either for myself or for our panelists? Seeing a lot of head nods of everyone seems to be happy. So, and of course, if something comes up in the interim, we'll be happy to forward that along as well. Just let me know. So Christine and Ed, thanks for joining us. I think this was useful information for us. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from you as these surveys go on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so now we have progressed to our TxDOT construction update. So Clayton, I think do you have something to share?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me stop sharing here and give you the opportunity to share your screen and tell us what the latest on construction in our region is.
All right, can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is up at the very north end of the project, the Bear Ends intersection, looking towards North Loop 340. You can see where we've got some asphalt ball breaker down for the new southbound main lanes. We've actually started some paving in that area since this picture was taken. At the lower part of your screen, the Barron's overpass, that bridge deck has been poured since this picture was taken. And then moving to the right side of the page, the new northbound frontage road, you can see portions of the concrete that have been placed. Actually, since this picture was taken, we've completed pavement from this area here all the way up to the North Loop 340 intersection. Okay, now this is from Barron's looking to the south. Again, on the left-hand side of the page, you can see where asphalt bond breaker went down for this frontage road. And again, since this picture was taken, there's actually been concrete placed for the vast majority of this stretch. There's a small area where we had a utility crossing where there's a small leave out, and that'll be paved very soon. Here in this area, crews have graded out this area for the new southbound main lanes. We expect concrete pavement to be going down in this area first part of next year. And then to the right, the completed southbound frontage road. All right, this is at the US 84 intersection looking to the east. There's been a little bit of concrete work in this intersection, but for the most part, this intersection looks the same. Once you see traffic moved onto this new northbound frontage road pavement and the main lane traffic switch to new southbound pavement, work in this intersection will pick back up again at this point. Okay, same intersection, US 84. You can see bridge beams have been set. We expect to pour that bridge deck either late this year or early part of next year. And again, work will continue on that west half of the intersection after traffic is switched to new main lane pavement next year. Just another shot looking to the south. Again, on the left-hand side of the page, there's been a lot of work in this Bellmead Drive intersection with new concrete pavement going down. Crews have been placing asphalt bond breaker and actually a little bit of concrete here for the southbound main lanes. And you can see the new braided ramp kind of coming together from this picture. This will be the new exit to Business 77, and there will be an entrance ramp that crosses under to enter southbound 35. Okay, again, the 77 intersection looking to the east, again, very similar to 84. Once you see some of the fringe road work wrap up, along with shifting main lane pavement, you'll see some more work pick up in these intersections. This is the west half of the 77 intersection. Again, you've got new bridge beams in place. Crews are working on setting deck panels. Should pour that bridge deck late part of this year, early next year. And then again, you can see the retaining walls that are nearing completion on either side of the bridge. And we should be paving those areas as well, early part of 2021. Now this is just south of the 77 intersection, looking to the south. Again, on the left-hand side of the page, we've got partially placed concrete pavement for the northbound frontage road. This area around Forest, we expect to see paving pick up late this year. So early 21, that stretch of frontage road should reopen. And then again, concrete pavement for the new main lanes that started here for the exit to MLK. And that pavement work will continue into early part of next year as well. Now this is directly above Forest Street. Again, this is the stretch I mentioned that we expect to start paving late part of this year and have it reopened in early 2021. Here on the right side of the screen, there was a deep drainage line that crossed under the railroad tracks and ran back up to the north. That's been completed. Crews have backfilled and are working on subgrade pavement structure here, and we should be paving it early 2021. I know currently right now, this entrance ramp is closed to get a drainage line across. We expect it to be reopened the early part of next week. So that will help with traffic flow in this area. So this is looking back to the north at the new railroad bridge. You can see that bridge deck's been placed, approach slabs have been placed, and crews are working on tying in pavement to either side of the bridge currently. This is directly above the MLK overpass. Since this picture's been taken, that bridge deck has been placed and completed. Crews are working on the pavement tie-ins on either side of the bridge, completed retaining walls on both sides of the bridge, and should be placing concrete pavement, if not late this year, early 2021. Here's a shot directly over the Brazos River. Again, since this picture has been taken, we've poured this bridge deck as well. Crews are working on tying in the subgrade on either side of the bridge. Bond breaker has actually been placed on the south side. It should be placed on the north side late this year. And then again, you should see concrete early 2021. Now this is looking back to the north from University Parks. You can see the newly completed overpass. Crews are working on installing bridge rail as we speak. And then again, this area in between bridges should be paved the early part of 2021. And just like 84 and 77, the University Parks intersection, once you see traffic shifted onto completed pavement here and on the main lanes, you'll see work pick up on these intersections underneath. All right, and this is from University Parks looking to the south. You can really see that this area has really come together over the last month. The majority of the retaining wall work is complete all the way down to the south end of the job. University Parks bridge deck is complete. 4th, 5th Street bridge deck is complete, along with the 11th and 12th Street overpass. Again, on the left-hand side, northbound frontage road work, drainage has been installed. Crews will be working on subgrade over the next few weeks and should begin paving either late this year or early next year. Here's a direct shot over 4th, 5th Street. Again, I mentioned the completed bridge and the completed retaining walls. Down at the bottom of the screen, you can see there's been some pretty significant water line work going on in this intersection to tie in a new 24-inch water line. That pipe is in the ground. We expect to make that tie-in potentially the late part of this year. So it's looking like it'll probably be early 2021 to get 4th Street reopened right here. And then looking to the south, we have completed the majority of the tie-ins of these side streets between 5th and 10th. We actually completed paving 10th Street this week, hope to get it open by next week, then close down 8th and 9th and have them completed by the end of the year. So we should have all side streets between 5th and 10th open by the end of this calendar year. And moving further to the south, this is the newly completed 11th, 12th Street overpass. Again, since this is taken, there's been more concrete pavement placed for the new main lanes on the north side of the bridge. And crews have actually started with some bond breaker asphalt pavement on this side of the bridge. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a good amount of concrete pavement has been placed for the frontage road. It's not pictured here, but there's a large drainage structure just off the page. Once that head wall is complete, that'll allow us to open up this piece of the frontage road. So we're hopeful that early part of 2021, traffic is running on new pavement over here. Okay, and this is down at the very south end of the project. Actually, this week, crews have placed concrete pavement to tie this northbound frontage road into the 17th, 18th Street intersection. Currently placing concrete at 16th and Park and several of these other intersections along the frontage road. And that wraps it up. So with that, I'll open it up. Are there any questions?
Clayton, this is Rock. I just want to tell y'all in TxDOT, y'all done a phenomenal job on this. I mean, for all the progress y'all made in a short amount of time and the communication, it's exceeded our expectations immensely. So just want to tell you, thank you how much what y'all have done for our community and the working relationship we've had at Baylor and the city. So great job.
Thank you, Rock. We appreciate that. Yeah, it's been great working with you and some of the other partners along the interstate as well, for sure. So.
I'm making a lot of progress quick, so it's pretty amazing.
Yep. And yeah, just kind of a overall update, I guess. For the southbound main lanes, we are anticipating that main lane traffic has moved to new concrete by next spring from basically the 77 intersection to the south end of the job. And then by next summer, all of southbound main lanes will be traveling on new concrete pavement from North Loop 340 to 17th, 18th Street. So we're still running a late 2022, early 23 substantial completion date.
All right, any other questions from the membership? All right, let me begin resharing here. All right, so we have our next meeting coming up in January. Normally we would hold that on January 7th, but that being fairly close to the New Year's holiday, we were going to be push it another week out to January 14th. And of course, we'll send you ample notice of that changed meeting date. It'll still be at 2 o'clock. We do have some guidance that we will be able to actually take action on this amendment to our transportation improvement program that we've discussed with you previously. We'll be actually doing the public involvement on that right after New Year's. And there's not a substantive change to that since the last time we presented this to you. We'll also have a continued update from TxDOT Construction. But one thing that we may be adding to this, I hinted earlier when we were talking about the transit safety plan that there are several targets that we look at on an annual basis related to performance-based planning. That would be safety and the public transit asset condition targets. Usually we do those in February. We also have some mid-course corrections with pavement and bridge and travel time reliability targets that we'll be considering this spring as well. And so there's a possibility we may be adding 1 or 2 of those to the January agenda, just so that we don't have quite as heavy of a lift when we get to February. So that's one thing that we may be adding to this. Admittedly, I thought we would, if you asked me 6 months ago, I thought we would probably be back to in-person meetings by this point, but it's very clear that we're a long way from being able to do that. So we'll be conducting virtual meetings, at least for the time being. Maybe by the summer, with a effective vaccine widely distributed, we'll be able to consider some different options at that point. But let me also say that if there's any particular topic of discussion you would like the technical committee to explore, please feel free to let us know and we'll get that on the upcoming agenda. So that's our director's report. Are there any comments or questions from the committee on that? All right, well, I'm not hearing any, so that concludes what we have on the agenda for today's meeting. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Since I probably won't get another chance to say so for most of you, I hope you all have a very safe and good holiday season, and I want to see everyone well in January.